This is the Digital Savage Experience Podcast, hosted by Roman Prokopchuk, bringing you all things digital marketing, tech, business, and motivation. What's stopping you from becoming relentless in all aspects of life? Are you ready to become a digital savage? Let's get into today's episode.
Hey everyone, this is Roman Prokopchuk, and this is the Digital Savage Experience Podcast. Today I have with me Jeremy Segal. Jeremy was a CFO of a 130-employee, $20 million business by age 25. Before age 30, he started, built, and sold his first business. Now Jeremy owns a niche auto dealership where he's organically grown 200K social followers and imported over 250 classic Japanese sports cars. Jeremy also has a podcast called Why Influence, where he interviews influencers about their why. He hopes to inspire the sharing of introverted knowledge and wisdom to raise the collective consciousness level of the human race. Thank you for joining me today.
Yeah, for sure. Thanks for having me.
My pleasure. So tell me a little bit about how you got to the 2019 you, some of kind of your business experiences, and what led you to start your podcast.
Sure. So basically, I've always aspired to be an entrepreneur, and my path to become an entrepreneur, the way that I saw it when I was younger, was to be a CFO of a company, because a CFO had the skill set that I saw was necessary to be a successful entrepreneur at the time. You know, went down the path of doing the accounting, finance in school, did information system in grad school, started out at a big four accounting firm, and was going down that path. And I noticed that the big four accounting firm wasn't really getting the skill set that I wanted for my entrepreneurial skills or even the CFO skills. So I left there and started at a very small niche consulting company. It's only 5 employees, and they implemented cloud accounting software for companies that outgrew QuickBooks. So I did a project there where I implemented a cloud accounting software for a company that did about $40 million a year in revenue, and we streamlined their accounting department from 7 people down to 1. And so I got a lot of experience really fast working in a small, fast-paced environment, and that opened up the doors for me to get a job offer to be a CFO of a company. So when I was 25, I took on the role of being a CFO of, like you said, a $20 million, 130 employee medical practice. I had 7 locations and I had direct reports. And I learned a lot there. And what that did for me is that let me unlock my permission to be an entrepreneur. So prior to that, you know, as far as that's my career. So prior to that, I had started and done random entrepreneurial ventures. I mean, I did everything down to back in kindergarten, I had sold erasers to kids for a nickel. In middle school, I sold stuff off the shelves of Walmart, and when I would sell stuff online, I would have my parents drive me to Walmart, I'd buy it and send it out. So I just always had this entrepreneurial mindset. And then even before being a CFO, I started a e-commerce business that got up to about $3,500 a month in sales. And then my partner started going through some personal issues, so we had to stop that business. And then I built another business with another friend where we got 10,000 sales in our first month making these Halloween masks. And then we started going to comic conventions and getting into Halloween stores with these masks. But I never saw myself as an entrepreneur. I never unlocked that for me. So it wasn't until I was a CFO of a company, and then once I left there, I was like, okay, I give myself permission to be an entrepreneur now. And then that's when I started an e-commerce business where I sold drone accessories online. It was back when the DJI Phantom original came out. We were selling accessories for that, making FPV kits and selling them on Amazon, and built a brand around that. And over 2 years, we built this business, and then we sold it off to someone. And after selling the business, we dumped that money. I've got a business partner, and we dumped the money into a car dealership because at the time we sort of stumbled on it, but there's a 25-year exemption rule in the US. So when the car is 25 years old, it's exempt from emissions and safety requirements. And a popular car called the Nissan Skyline became eligible for import. So we actually imported the first Skyline into the country across the Canadian border at midnight, August 1st, 2014. And just stumbled on this while flipping the car. We decided, decided like, let's just make a website and publish an article, and we got a bunch of attention. So we just sort of, from there sold that car, bought a couple from Japan, dumped the money from the business we sold into it, and then started a car dealership where we're importing cars from Japan. And that's what we have still today. I'm about 5 years into that. We grew it from the ground up, and we've got about 180, 200,000 social followers at this point. And then, similar to the giving myself permission thing related to being an entrepreneur, that's a similar thing happened to me for having a voice. Like for my car dealership, I was always behind the scenes. When we started it, a news company, ABC Action News, came up to us and said, we want to do a piece on you. And I got a friend to actually come and be the face of the business because I didn't want to be on camera. Anytime I was in pictures or videos in our media, I would edit myself out or find ways to edit myself out. And if I couldn't, I just wouldn't use the content, which actually, made it harder to tell stories and to build a brand because I'm always hiding behind the camera. And that's still the case with the car dealership. I'm not really there. And that's the premise of the podcast, is to try to, I realized that I've got all this wisdom and knowledge around entrepreneurship. I started going to mastermind groups and really helping other entrepreneurs level up their mindsets. And I saw that I started having this value. And I feel like that a lot of other people have this value. A lot of my friends are some of the most brilliant people I've ever met, and they're not sharing online or sharing in larger ways to make an impact. And so my podcast is more of a passion project, but I want to inspire people who don't share to start sharing, or the people that do share to share on a larger level so that we can get more knowledge out there.
No, that's awesome. And I think everyone has a story to tell, and everybody has knowledge. Even you may not like the limelight or be around people. I think it's important to kind of take the first step. I know we met at the, podcast movement, and I was actually in a session where you, went up and spoke. And I think you have to, as an individual, as an entrepreneur, as someone in 2019 building their brand, eventually, if you want to reach, higher levels, you need to somewhat be in front of the limelight or share your story in one way or another.
Yeah, and actually in that session, that was my first time on stage like that, on stage with that large of an audience and people watching. It's on camera. So I was super nervous. When I got off, my hands were shaking. Prior to 2 months ago, I launched my podcast 2 months ago. I'm about 18 episodes in. But prior to that, I never had an Instagram. I never, very, very rarely ever posted on Facebook. I posted on Facebook maybe 6 months prior to launching my podcast. And my post had one comment from a friend I hadn't talked to in several years saying, dang, this guy's still on Facebook. So I was very much off social media and off just having any kind of impact with, all the knowledge and wisdom that I've gotten. So I've really been pushing myself to get uncomfortable, and going on stage was definitely a big moment for me doing that at podcast movement.
Yeah, I agree. And I think in terms of, business success or any kind of discovery, it's often times of kind of turmoil or tension where good ideas or companies or something, positive is born, but taking that kind of first step and getting past it, I think is the hardest thing to do.
Right, I agree.
So what motivates you to succeed?
So I've been putting a lot of thought into that lately. And, it sounds like I'm like super successful financially because of my journey that I've taken, and that maybe that's been my driving factor, but it really hasn't. I mean, when I got out of college, I got my nice corporate job. And then my next job after that, I took a $20,000 pay cut to get the opportunities that I wanted. And then the next job after that, I took another $25,000 pay cut. So I was actually making enough money to just barely exist, if not maybe losing a little bit of money. And I was working full time to get the experience that I wanted. And so as I drilled more into my why, I realized that I care more about having an impact than being money driven. And then when I look at my businesses, like I was passionate, I have passion for the process of building businesses, and I've a passion for the impact that the business has. Like the mask business, it made people happy. I actually had someone come up to me at a Comic-Con who said that one of his friends bought a mask for me the year prior, and he loved it so much he kept it in the glove box of his car. And one day his friend was in a car accident, and there's nobody around. It's late at night. And so this kid, he actually went to his glove box, grabbed the mask and tied it around his arm where he was just bleeding a lot. And the mask actually kept him alive long enough for the ambulance to come and take him to the hospital. It's just crazy the unintended consequences that come from someone who has so much passion about this mask, that the mask actually ended up saving this guy's life. And that was a really powerful moment for me because it just, made him happy, and it also saved his life. So that's pretty awesome. But yeah, like the drone business, when I had that e-commerce business, I was trying to make life simpler. I was trying to make it's really complicated to be able to see the footage while you flew it. And one of our biggest products was an FPV kit. It was a first-person view kit. It was a monitor that let you see the footage while you flew it. And that was very hard to do in the early days. You had to do a lot of research, assemble a lot of components, and it just wasn't very user-friendly. So I'm just trying to make people's lives easier. In the car dealership, and I've got tons of customer testimonial videos about how happy these people are to have their dream cars and be able to have them here in the US. And that was really motivating for me in the early days. And actually in the more recent times, because it's not as much of an early entrant into that marketplace, I've been struggling a little bit with my motivation related to the car dealership. So I'm actually working on doing a pivot there to reinstate the passion for me, because I'm still bringing cars in, but it feels like it's become more to just sustain the business and sustain a base level of income for me, whereas I'd rather have a little bit more of a purpose behind that. And then the podcast, of course, there's no money driving factors for that. It's just purely passion focused.
No, it's great. I think changing at a certain time of your career and discovering either it being a passion or giving back or leaving legacy, and not necessarily chasing money, because I think if you follow your passion or try to leave a legacy and add value, eventually that's going to build a better brand and make the right connections over solely driven by money, solely driven about making connections just to up in terms of a financial deal or something like that. If you're genuinely adding at value, and I try to do that through social. I've tried to do that the last maybe 2-3 years, go heavily on it, reach out to people, see even smaller businesses, because I tend to work with Fortune 500s and 6-7 figure marketing spends, but give smaller businesses, startups, just free advice, have a call, a half hour. And it's been coming after the fact in terms of this person didn't have to do this, but they sat down and added value. So I think that's really important.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that.
So what's one weakness you may have had in the past that you've kind of reinvented, changed, and now use it as a strength?
Yeah, so I sort of brought it up a little bit earlier, but it was giving myself permission, or the lack of giving myself permission. I think that's been something I discovered for myself that has held me back. Like, I never became an entrepreneur because I needed to be a CFO of a company. But where would I be today if I was allowing myself to be an entrepreneur back when I was in elementary school, selling stuff on eBay or Yahoo Auctions, or in high school or college when I was buying and flipping things, or when I was making these masks? I mean, just every business venture that I just did on a small level because I never gave myself permission to go big with it. And I had this mental block saying, I can't really be an entrepreneur unless I'm a CFO, because that's just what I set for myself. And it's a similar thing for more recent change for me, which is giving myself permission to have a voice. When I first met my wife at the time, as girlfriend, she actually gave me a check to join Toastmasters when we first met, just because I didn't talk a lot and I wasn't the best at articulating. And Toastmasters is like a nonprofit to help you get better at public speaking. And it took me 4 years to cash that check. I kept that check until I cashed it for the purpose of what it was intended for. And it took me 4 years to cash that. And then I did Toastmasters for about 1.5 years to 2 years before starting my podcast. It's just sort of the journey that it took to give myself permission to have a voice and giving myself permission to have to be an entrepreneur. I think that if you have one takeaway from this interview, is just, I think that that's something that you can apply to your world. Like, what are you not giving yourself permission for today that you want to be, or that you want to become? Because that's something that if you gave yourself permission to be that or do that today, how would your world change? I think that's pretty powerful for some people.
No, I agree. And I think, a lot of people go through life and not get to that point, live their lives, kind of in the shadows or be scared of something. But I mean, the worst thing that can happen is get a no, or you get some kind of rejection, or you learn from the experience, but you'll never know if you don't actually try or make some kind of effort.
Yeah, I agree.
So what's one piece of advice you can leave with the audience, either personal or professional?
I was going to use the give yourself permission, but I feel like I talked a lot about that. So I would say to find your why. I think that that's something that a lot of people are missing out on. A lot of people don't really understand what their why is, and you can't really push through uncomfortable situations, and you can't really do things that are out of your comfort zone if you don't have the motivation for it. And to have the maximum amount of motivation, it's to have a very clear why for why you're doing it, why you're passionate about it, why you want to do that thing. And people have asked me, good ways to explore that, because most people try to tackle that on their own. And I don't think that that's the best way to do that. You should either get a family member or a friend to help you explore it, and just make it a point to sit down and have the person explore your why, just constantly ask you questions to dig into your why and find your purpose. But another good thing, if you don't know anybody, or if you want someone who's really articulate and can help you maybe a little bit better with it, is to find someone who is a copywriter or someone who's good at copywriting, because those people have a way with words. And if you sit down with someone who's a copywriter and you make it a point that you're here as like a coaching and extraction session, and they're going to sit here and drill into your why and extract it out, and then document that and articulate it down for you. I think that that's really important, no matter what it is that you're doing.
No, I agree. And I think that's important for an individual. And I think that's important to have a kind of a clear focus and, what you're about and what you're doing something. And in terms of a lot of the times, different startup pitches, company pitches, oftentimes when you look down into it, the person or the startup may not necessarily know what it's even about or what they're passionate about. So figuring out kind of a concise story or focus is really important.
Yeah, I think that, my podcast is called Why Influence, because I always questioned, why should you influence? And what I do is I interview influencers about their why, and I deep dive into it and find out what's their driving factor, and why is it that they're an unstoppable movement maker, or why is their motivation so strong for what they're doing? And it's because they have some kind of why, and a lot of times they may not know, but I like to drill into that and then share that with people so that that can help inspire other people.
No, I agree. I really appreciate you stopping by today. Can you let the audience know how they can find you or anything else you may have going on?
Yeah, the best way to find me would be to go to my podcast website, which is whyinfluence.com, whyinfluence.com. That's the best way to find me there. You can follow the socials or listen to the podcast, or shoot me an email through there, or send me a private message through the social media associated to it. And if you want to learn more about my car dealership or anything else, there's a link to my LinkedIn, and it shows the name. My car dealership is called Montu Motors, and I'd be happy to talk with anybody, or just bounce ideas off of anyone if they think that I can help them figure anything out.
Awesome. Thanks again for stopping by.
Yeah, sure. Thanks for having me.
This podcast has been brought to you by Nova Zora Digital. Find out how Nova Zora Digital can help your company grow online. Learn more at novazoradigital.com. Until next time, all you digital savages.